issues. I mentioned at that time that it is our goal as a city and as the Budget and Finance Committee to make El Pueblo financially self-sufficient by the fiscal year 10-11. When this proposal was brought up in council, there are some remarks by some council members that we've tried this before, that there's been other efforts to accomplish this goal, but I do believe we are on the right track, and I do believe that it is the right time to do it, just given the financial situation of the city. So with that, let me begin by asking our let's have the controller come up as well right now. Let's first have the controller come up, and then we'll ask the general manager to come up. So the controller, if you could come up. Now, we are taking this item up in this committee a lot quicker than usual. Typically, when the audits are released, we wait for a full response from the program or from the department to respond to the audit's findings, and then we hear the item in this committee. However, we have scheduled this item before the final report is out, and the reason we did that is to get a progress report from the general manager on the items that were raised to ensure that we are addressing the issues raised in the controller's report. So with that, recognizing that we are taking this out of our usual way of handling audit reports, if you could just give a very quick summary of your findings in your report, and then we'll go to the general manager.
Okay. Rick Taguchi, Controller's Office. The audit report was issued June 24th. The main objective of the audit was to assess internal controls over the department's revenues and expenses. Some of the key findings, again, as you indicated, the rates have not been increased for at least 10 years. Increasing the rates to market rate could increase revenues by as much as 1.1 to 1.5 million. This amount relates only to the 57 merchants who have current concession agreements. If the city could raise rents on the 17 merchants with lease agreements, an additional $200,000 could be generated. Secondly, there are several buildings that have been, for the most part, idle that could potentially generate revenue as much as $1.5 million a year if they could be rented out as office space. We recognize that some of these buildings might need some repairs. There's some legal impediments involved with some of these buildings also. But based on the potential for this revenue, we believe the city should begin developing a plan for making these properties either income producing or putting them to better use. In terms of common area maintenance fees, El Pueblo does not bill the full cost to the merchants for maintaining common areas. And as a result, they could be generating as much as $300,000 a year additional in revenue. They collect about $60,000 a year, but it takes about $360,000 to operate. There was a lack of oversight of some of the nonprofit organizations. Some not-for-profits are not in compliance with their agreements, and others don't have current agreements. Some nonprofits do not appear to be providing sufficient in-kind contributions for the value they receive from the city. And then lastly, the department could not account for all its equipment in its inventories. For example, they could not account for 9 of 12 items listed in the centralized asset management system. In addition, we physically observed 13 computer items and attempted to trace those items into the SOS database. SOS is used to account for computer equipment, and only 5 of the items were in that listing.
Okay, that item wasn't in your executive summary, right? That was
that last one.
Yeah.
Yes, it was not.
Yeah, but it's in the report. Okay. Okay. Does that complete your report? Okay, thank you very much. And do you know when was the last time the controller did an audit of El Pueblo?
Well, we did an audit back in, I believe, 2004, and it was a follow-up audit maybe 2 years later.
What was that audit on?
It was similar. I mean,
I thought there was an audit on the parking revenues
Yeah.
that weren't being collected.
We did something on parking, and there's been some improvements in that area because I know we've had increased revenue because of the improvements on the parking.
That is correct. The 2004 audit was a financial audit. It came as a result of department not being able to manage the financial affairs, and controller send it to him.
Before you go on, can you please identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Farid Safar with Controller's Office.
Okay.
2004 was more of a fiscal reviews and management reviews.
Uh-huh. And have those recommendations been implemented? Are you aware?
In most part, yes, they have. There have been significant improvement in fiscal operations.
In fiscal
Yeah.
operations, okay. Including the parking, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So let me call up Mr. Andrade, Robert Andrade, General Manager of El Pueblo, and also I understand we are joined by Herbert Sequenza, the President of the El Pueblo Commission. You may want to also come up, and if we could first hear from Mr. Andrade, and then we'll hear from Mr. Sequenza. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Robert Andrade, General Manager of El Pueblo.
If you could respond and give the committee an overview of your progress in addressing some of these recommendations, recognizing that we don't have a written report yet, and when you begin, if you could let us know when we expect to have a written report on the response to the audit.
First things first, we will have a written report in response to the audit. It has been incorporated into our goals. I've yet to meet with one other division head. I expect a formal transmittal from our department by the middle of August that could be forwarded to this committee for your review and perusal.
Okay, thank you.
And so at this point, I would sort of hesitate to get into any of the specifics regarding some of these matters.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do want to say that it's important for any department to have a view, outside view, to take a look at what our operations are. We embrace any improvements that could be forthcoming. We certainly are not perfect. However, as you pointed out in your last question to the controller regarding our parking revenue, we have made some significant strides in improving the fiscal management of the department. We have had, through the leadership of our commission, as well as the leadership of council and the mayor, increased those fees which are under our control. We surpassed our projected revenue for 2008-2009. And so we, under those pieces that are under our control, we have not only met our goals, but actually surpassed them. That notwithstanding, there are obviously some other issues that have some history, some long history with the monument. What I can tell you is that under the leadership of the mayor, we have set into motion a series of meetings with key offices, including the city attorney, to develop merchant leases that we can all agree upon as to form and legality. And we've obtained the support of some key departments in the city for a rental study, as well as a common area maintenance evaluation, both of which were made mention in the controller's audit. We expect that by the end of August that we will have those figures to be able to roll into proposed leases. Additionally, our offices have been preparing ancillary exhibits to clarify and strengthen the department's administrative oversight of leases. And we've been working on some of these items, including policies that deal with encroachment, late policy, annual maintenance plans, operational rules and regulations, and annual performance reviews. These will be pieces that will be also rolled into the proposed leases. And then under the leadership of the Commission, of the El Pueblo Commission and its Budget and Finance and Operations Committee, we've had a series of presentations from former El Pueblo commissioners, past presidents of the Commission, former CLA, former lease negotiators, experts in the field of real estate, city attorneys involved in prior lease development and negotiations, all of which have been public, transparent, so that we began getting some lessons learned from our predecessors, so that as we go forward, we can do so expeditiously and one that is in the best interest of the city.
Okay. So on the leases, you anticipate that by August you will have the agreements or the fine points of what the city will propose to the tenants as potential points for the leases or a blueprint. And after August, from August to December, you'll negotiate with the tenants so that in December you will have finalized or have executed agreed upon leases. Is that correct?
The first part of that is correct. We will have all our preparation done by August, by the end of August, and we will sit down and initiate negotiations with the tenants. The expectation is that they would sign by December, but that piece I cannot control.
Okay. And I've met with some tenants, and they recognize and they are willing to pay or move towards increased rent for the rental of their spaces, and we are headed in that direction, it appears. The controller's report mentioned that we could charge anywhere between, I forgot what it mentioned, it didn't have it here. In terms of the numbers of what the controller's report suggested, there's a range. Would you say that range is correct or it's not correct? In terms of
It is in the ballpark.
It's in the ballpark
It is
of
in
what
the ballpark.
we could charge, yeah. And so I would assume that without revealing your negotiations yet, you will come up in August, that is going to be public in terms of what we propose to the tenants.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I believe from the process standpoint, Mr. Chairman, is that we would, once the department, along with the work that we're doing with the city attorney and the mayor's office, we would take it to our commission, ask for their blessing, if you will, and then at that point forward, take it to the merchants and the tenants for negotiations.
Okay, let me ask my colleague if there's any questions on the leases. I'm going to ask the general manager to go point by point on the other issues raised by the controller, but at this point, any questions on the leases themselves?
How long have you been there as a general manager?
I'll be beginning my third year in August.
And it's been at least 10 years since the rents were increased.
Actually, Councilman, for most of the tenants, they have not been increased since about 25 years.
25 years. So what are they charging a square foot?
Currently, square foot charge,
The average rent is $1.35 per square foot.
approximately $1.35.
That's what the controller's report states.
It's approximately $890,000 a year for 78 merchants.
For 78 merchants?
Correct.
What about the restaurants?
That includes the restaurants.
So in the center, they've got the little,
Puestos, if you will.
what are they called?
Puestos.
Puestos?
Puestos.
Puestos or Questos?
Puestos.
Puestos, puestos.
P-U-E. Puestos.
Puestos. And then they have on both sides fixed structures with all the amenities, restrooms, et cetera. They're all paying the same rent, whether you're
No,
inside
sir.
a restaurant?
No, they are not paying the same rent. It's based on square footage, so the larger restaurants are paying a greater share of the rent.
But it's $1.35 whether you're,
Approximately. Now, we did have a recent RFP approximately a year ago for an opportunity, a new building that opened up that we were able to RFP out at market rate, and they're paying substantially higher.
What's that rate?
I don't know offhand. I can tell you that they're paying approximately $5,800 per month for their space.
Okay, because I can remember the concern about this a long time ago, where the parking revenue issue, and then for 25 years, and I'm not faulting you on that, somebody obviously wasn't watching what was going on, I know economy's down, but it's gone through a lot of cycles in the last 25 years. So I'm glad the controller did this audit. We're trying to recoup some of these dollars. When we talk about the rent, the leases, we refer to the maintenance, the common areas. Is that included in their current rent, or is there a separate allocation for that?
It is included in their total overall monthly charge. However, that total figure on an annual basis is approximately $60,000 a year.
For everyone?
Total.
For
everyone.
all the establishments?
Correct.
And that's security and maintenance and everything?
And custodial, correct.
And that's why we're losing almost $300,000 a year? Okay. All right. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, can you explain to us how does I'm not sure if it was Proposition H or Measure H, but apparently there was a referendum that made a change to the city charter that related to the El Pueblo leases. Now, how does that relate to the leases, and how does that affect what you're doing to come up with something that you present in August?
I should preface my remarks by saying you probably would be a better question directed to the city attorney for an interpretation. My understanding of Prop H is, and it was amended under the charter, that permitted or that acknowledged that those existing merchants, as of the year 2000, who had businesses with the city, were exempt from competitive bidding. There was a motion, I believe, by Councilman Alatorre prior to that indicated that long-term leases, some figure of long-term leases that was discussed, something like 55 years, or I believe that's the case. But
okay, and so does that apply? How does that affect your negotiations with the tenants?
My understanding, and again, I think it's probably better posed to the city attorney. The question of long-term leases, I think, is an issue from a legal standpoint. From our perspective, we will go forward with what we believe to be in the best interest of the city. We believe that there's some benefit to be had by those merchants that have direct connection and lineage to the founding of the street. We believe that there should be some recognition of that. However, we know that over the years, we don't know how many of existing merchants actually fall within those parameters.
Okay.
And part of what we need to understand and negotiate is just that. But the piece that deals with the approval of the charter indicates that there's no competitive bidding for businesses on Olvera Street for those existing merchants at the time.
At the time. The city attorney is here. Do you have any light to shed on this, or are you familiar with this? Should we?
I think it's Assistant City Attorney.
Chief cook and bottle washer, yes.
Given a higher value.
I apologize. I have not been looking at this issue or advising on it. I did work on El Pueblo matters back when the measure was proposed by the council and the voters approved it. There was a very strong policy determination by the council at that time that these merchants, given their historical contribution to the street were in fact in a unique position and that position and contribution should be recognized by exempting it from competitive bidding and giving them an entitlement to a long-term lease. That being said, that's all my recollection of what the measure does. It obviously has an impact in that I think they will assert that provision in the negotiations. Where we end up ultimately is not clear. But it's still within the ability to negotiate the leases. It doesn't take our ability away to do that. It's just that it's another factor to be considered for those merchants who were there at that time.
Got it. So, Mr. Andrade, you don't believe or think that Proposition H, that's a funny thing to say, Proposition H will affect your ability to resolve the lease issue at El Pueblo?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
It didn't say that the rate couldn't be appropriate, just that they would be basically exclusive. It's not going to be for free, but they would pay a rate, but they would basically have first right of refusal if they wish to leave or something else, or they first right without an RFP. But not that they'd stay there for free.
There were several questions there. My understanding of Prop H is only that they were exempt from competitive bidding. With respect to market rates or any rates, I believe that's to be negotiated. With respect to assignability, or that is to be negotiated, and there are legal implications with respect to that as well.
What about the term of the lease? It didn't say anything about the term of the
It
lease?
said long-term lease. It did not define what long-term was.
Okay.
And then what if
That's
they-
my understanding.
What if they have a long-term lease, and I'm the person that signs the lease, but then I sublease to someone else? Was that covered? In other words,
Well, first of all,
I'm going to have it in my name, but I'm going to sublease it to my friend and charge him.
There is no subleasing that is permitted within the existing concession agreements. I believe that is going to be a term or a condition in which the city will negotiate on.
Have we discussed that with the
We
folks
discussed
who-
it internally and with the city attorney.
Yeah, let me say, first of all, the charter doesn't address that. It didn't address the subleasing or the assignment of the leases, so that's all subject to our negotiations with them. It can be one of the terms.
And those negotiations are at what stage?
Again, the stage that we're at now is preparing the document and the terms in-house for the city, with the expectation that those documents, or that master lease, if you will be moved forward for negotiations at the end of August, early September.
Now, we're going to negotiate the rate, or we're going to negotiate other aspects? In other words, subleasing or other folks running the operation.
Yeah, we will seek legal counsel with respect to what is permissible, and at this point, I'm not. I do not want to convey what it is that the department's position is with respect to that.
Thank you. On the second item, the second large item that was raised by the audit, it talks about the underutilized properties that could potentially be used to increase its revenue streams and/or enhance its mission. Any preliminary thoughts on that finding?
Yes, and I understand that conceptually at least that's how I view it, the controller looked at this. We have a number of fairly large old buildings, one of which, the substation, for instance. At one time, it was being considered for a transportation museum. Currently, it's being used to store, also used for construction, a staging area for some of the significant projects that the city has ongoing right now. Just by way of a side note, the city is investing approximately $30 million in El Pueblo over the next number of years in a number of projects. So the city has really recognized that it needs to invest in El Pueblo, and we want to thank the city leadership for that. Getting back to the main point concerning the use of some of these buildings, they would require a significant amount of capital outlay by the city in order to get them ready controller suggesting that there could be dollars potential revenue is correct conceptually, but what is really a significant piece that needs to be stated is that the city would need to invest a significant amount of money for these buildings, including earthquake upgrades, just to get them ready to be in a position to where they could be leased out.
And are you formulating a plan as to how to go about that and what the costs associated with that and the vision for what that may look like?
Well, there has been some preliminary discussions concerning some of these buildings. However, it has not been a priority. And again, because we have a $30 million construction projects, I should say, operating, we know that the substation and other big pieces within the area are not going to be made available for the foreseeable future. Yeah. However, on the other side, on the south side, if you will, of the monument, there are some endeavors that are being discussed, including the expansion of the Chinese American Museum.
Now, does El Pueblo have a master plan so that if I say, what are we going to do with this one building, I could turn to the document and say, oh, I see, they're planning to, when money becomes available, make that an arts gallery or something. Do we have a master plan for El Pueblo?
We do not have a master plan for El Pueblo. What we do have as a guidepost, if you will, is a general plan that is the state's general plan that dictates to us what we can and cannot do at the monument, and it is a guidepost, if you will, for those pieces. So that, for instance, the Pico House, which all of you know is a wonderful historic building that the city also invested in, currently used for meetings. It's also used to generate revenue for filming, etc. We've also used it for exhibits. The general plan, the state's general plan, dictates to us what should we commercialize that area, what that area could be used for, and what the commercialization. It would dictate what kind of commercialization could take place.
Okay. On the controller's report, their recommendation on dealing with this issue is it asked the management to consider issuing requests for proposals for the underutilized properties. The RFP should include, among other things, factors such as needed repairs and deferred maintenance of these buildings as part of negotiating equitable rental revenues with potential lessees. For buildings that cannot be rented out, a determination should be made as to the best use of the building. I'll request that when you return with your written report, if you could also include in there a discussion about the possibility of adopting a master plan for El Pueblo, because we currently do have the state standards which guide us what we can and cannot do, but the master plan will give us a vision for the direction that we would like to go with El Pueblo. Do we have the right type of balance of merchants versus art space versus historical context versus the different types of offerings we could make at El Pueblo? So if you could lay out a plan for that, what that may look like, if it would cost us $50,000 to initiate an RFP to get a master plan, we need to know that, because I do think that as opposed to us looking at these empty spaces right now and just issuing an RFP, I'd much rather see the vision first and then say, okay, well, this is a vision. In that building, we're going to seek this type of use. In this other building, we're going to seek that type of use given the available space. So if you could include that in your report when you.
Very good suggestion, Councilman.
Okay. Anything else on the underutilized buildings, Mr.? The other issue was that was raised by the controller's report, says that El Pueblo does not bill merchants for the full cost of maintaining common areas. Consequently, the department is losing potential revenue of approximately $300,000 per year. You spoke about that a little bit. I understand you have a study that is completed. Has it been completed?
It has not been completed. It's actually the work is being done as we speak. Okay. Several walkthroughs have already taken place with measurements, but we expect that to be completed by the end of August, in time for our document.
Okay. The other item that was raised is there's a lack of oversight of nonprofit organizations using El Pueblo. Some nonprofits are not in compliance with their agreements or do not have current agreements. Other nonprofits do not appear to be providing sufficient in-kind contributions for the value they receive from the city. Your thoughts on that or your approach to that?
Yes. First, I think we need to distinguish, and I think the Controller's Office did do that with respect to those nonprofits that have a main focus. Their mission is in concert with El Pueblo's mission, and then those that are not. I have been working with the city attorney for what would be considered a master agreement for our nonprofits as well. This would be one that would spell out the relationship between the city, or El Pueblo, if you will, and the nonprofit, and use as a guidepost or formula what would be the amount of revenue generated should we be able to take that space and rent it out, and roll in the CAM rate for that as well. So we get to a particular figure, say it's $1,000 a month for agency X, then the agreement that we would execute with that agency, that nonprofit, if you will, would spell out that 501c3 would provide to the visitors of El Pueblo the equivalent of $1,000 of in-kind service on a monthly basis. And our expectations, so very similar to accountability, not only for me as your general manager, but also the accountability for the city. The other piece that I think is critical, and it keeps me up at night at times, has to do with liability. If we don't have agreements with some of these agencies, and something were to happen, somebody were to get hurt, the city is liable for that. And it as I said, it keeps me up at night. And so I want to ensure that from an insurance standpoint, from a quality and credibility standpoint, that these agencies are in concert with city rules and regulations and are providing an in-kind service that's equivalent to the amount of cost to the city. And I will be rolling those agreements out as well.
Okay. So there are several recommendations that the audit has here, and one of those is to ensure that these organizations who are there and their activities coincide with El Pueblo's mission. And so there again, we have the value of having a master plan, so that we're not only talking about the physical infrastructure of what these buildings have, but we're also talking about what is the purpose and goal of El Pueblo, and whatever uses we have in those buildings are meeting the mission of El Pueblo.
Yes.
So we look forward to that. And finally, on my end, the report points out that El Pueblo lacks monitoring to ensure that merchants who signed lease or concession agreements or pay rents are authorized tenants. The department has not had a process to routinely verify tenancy. Your thoughts on that?
That's correct, a correct finding, and we will, as part of the process of signing agreements, seek verification to ensure that when we do go forward with recommended agreements, that they are with the legally represented business owner.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Zine, any questions? Any questions? Comments? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We will now hear from the President of the Commission, Herbert Sequenza, to hear your general thoughts on what's before us.
Thank you, Councilman Huizar and Councilman Zine. I'm very glad the audit came out. I think it's a little bit embarrassing at one point, but it sheds light on what the problems are, and they're not new problems. These are problems that go back to the audit of 2004. And I just want to let you know that as the commission is very, very committed to having these leases signed, having the leases signed, and I think we're all in favor of raising them to market value rent. And what we have to consider also that it is a living monument, that cultural activities are presented by our merchants on a daily basis. So, we have to take those things into consideration. But I do think we're all for making the monument self-sufficient and relying less and less on the general fund from the city. Mm-hmm. So we're very committed on that. And I want to thank you, Councilman Huizar, for bringing this to as a priority of this on your agenda, because we believe it's very important, particularly in these economic times.
Yeah.
because we definitely don't want to drain the city for more money. I have my opinions about the different problems we have. Is particularly like I said, I think the leases are something we are going to do. We're going to do. If we were to raise CAM charges, I think we have to be very aware that we need to provide even better services, that the city cannot cut those services at what janitorial and maintenance and things like that. I mean, if we're going to charge more, we have to make sure the merchants know that we will upgrade those services and not degrade them. So we have to be careful about that. As far as the nonprofits are, the commission's very committed in helping these nonprofits be in compliance and also beefing up their activities. As you know, the arts are taking a big blow with funding, and it's very hard for art nonprofits to survive in this day and age. So I think we, as a commission, we have to help them find other ways to maybe partner up with other nonprofits and just make them more visible. And I think that's what I'm asking for, particularly with the Mexican Cultural Institute, to just be more visible and provide much more services. We also have to find other ways of bringing in income. As you noted, the 2004 we raised the parking rates, which was a blessing because we found out that if we wouldn't have raised those parking rates, we would have been in even bigger trouble right now. So that definitely brought in some income that we needed for this year. We should look into maybe even raising them more. That might be a possibility. I'm also looking at other ways of bringing other revenue by creating maybe 2 or 3 non-traditional special events. In other words, RFPing other three nights or other ways of bringing concert promoters to El Pueblo to promote their concerts or special events. Again, we have to bring more and more people down to El Pueblo and bring up the cachet of LA's birthplace. And I think we're lacking in that in just public relations and just kind of reinventing El Pueblo and bringing people back. There's virtually no nightlife there, while grand performances, Pershing Square, all these places have night events and bring thousands of people. Olvera is dark, so we have to change that and bring people down to Olvera Street and spend money. Again, legally, we cannot. The commission cannot negotiate these leases, but we are definitely 100% behind bringing them up to market value, whatever that is.
Yeah. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you, and thank you for your service. I know the commission puts a lot of time on a volunteer basis to improve the birthplace of the city of Los Angeles. Now, in terms of the process to adopt the leases, what is that process? It would come as a proposal from the general manager to the commission, from the commission to committee, and then the full council?
I think there's probably a couple of ways to do that. It could go to the council for adoption for, say, a master agreement, which I believe took place back in '97, or we can go negotiate once the commission approves our recommendations, negotiate, and then bring, if you will, a signed copy to the council.
Okay. And what's the commission's role in this?
Well, I believe the commission actually does have authority. They are the legal entity over the general manager and the department. Now, they can't negotiate leases, but they approve leases.
Okay, so at some point, they're going to go through the commission for their input.
Yes.
Okay.
They absolutely have to. Here's the awkwardness: is that we could find ourselves with the commission either ultimately approving, and then going to the council, and the council deciding not in favor of that as well. So we're trying to figure out what might be the best way from a city standpoint to do that.
Great. Well, thank you. And I think we're on the right track. When we handled the parking issue, a lot of people told us that, some people were afraid to touch the issue, and that people didn't want to raise parking fees. It was the right thing to do, as our president of the commission mentioned, and we would have been in a much worse situation if we hadn't done what was necessary. It's not that we were raising fees for the sake of raising fees and getting more revenue. It was because we had to charge reasonable rates that other parking lots in the area were charging, and we haven't seen a negative impact from that, but only positive. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one public speaker on this item. Mr. Jimenez. Yes, if you could sit down over here. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Stephen Jimenez, and I'm representing Vivian Bonzo, president of the Alvera Street Merchants Association, and Mike Mariscal of the Alvera Street Merchants Association Foundation, and I also represent several of the merchants on the street. I wanted to read into the record that the merchants are in the process of responding to the city controller's audit, and we should have that within 5 business days. It will be in writing, and it will be distributed. So you will have an opportunity to hear our responses to the city controller's audit. The other thing I want to talk about is Mr. Andrade brought up several items that I'd like to take issue with at this time. Item number 1 talked about the rents. He stated that the rents haven't been raised since 1985. My research indicates that those rates have been raised. It raised approximately the time that the lease for the 17 merchants went into effect, which would probably be around 2001. That included an increased rent, that included common area, maintenance fee, and that also included the merchants paying property tax to the County of Los Angeles, which they were not doing before. And so when you say it has not been raised, we differ, and if you would like, we could provide you with the written documentation to substantiate that.
Okay.
The second thing I want to bring up is regard to Proposition H. When you look at the ballot argument, it did say negotiate long-term leases. That is a critical point that I wish to make today. In the ballot arguments, you had the city attorney at the time, Kenneth Hahn.
Keep going.
Keep going. Thank you. Thank you. You had, I think, two or three other council members in support of this. Okay. Now you have 17 merchants signing under the long-term leases that were executed by the city council. So you have an action that said long-term leases. You had a city council taking an action instructing the monument to do long-term leases, and you have 17 merchants executing a contract for 55 years, beginning in 1998. Okay. Now, the purpose for me of bringing that is that it economically disadvantages the other merchants on the street who have been technically been paying the month-to-month since the new rates went up that they paid after 1998. You have them paying CAM, you have them paying county taxes. It's economically disadvantages them. The second thing is you had a city attorney not only endorsing Proposition H, that was Kenneth Jim Hahn, you also had him signing the contracts of a majority of those 17 long-term leases. Okay, I actually began a research into looking at some of those leases, and actually the former city attorney, Rocky Delgadillo, signed one of the last leases for long-term, and that is the Fernandez lease. And it has the same items. It has the same long-term rights. It has the right to 55 years. It has the parking lot. It has all these other things that the city put in. But the other merchants, the ones that are economically disadvantaged, have not. They haven't. We've attempted to meet, and I wasn't part of that process, but I'm told that the merchants have been attempting to meet to get this resolved.
Okay.
So as you go forward with this, keep in mind that those merchants still know that they're paying an increased rent, and they have been paying an increased rent since the beginning of, I believe, sometime after 1998. They all believe that they're entitled to some kind of a long-term lease. That lease says 55 years, and that was the last thing that the city attorney went back to the city council with as far as negotiations. I think in the administrative code it says it's the city is to come back with what the terms of the leases are.
Okay.
If you have any questions of me, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Great. No, thank you very much. That'll be it for right now. And thank you. We appreciate you all, your group also preparing a response to the audit. We look forward to getting that, and we will actually be happy to incorporate that when we come back and hear all the items together. Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move on. On this item, I'd like to continue it so that we give the general manager an opportunity to respond to the audit, and we could hear both items with the general manager's written responses, and we'll continue it for 60 days, gives us September. No, yes, 1, 2, September 15th. Yeah, 60 days.
Or you can note and file this because the actual audit is still have a committee.
We could note and file this, and then we could have the actual audit come back and reschedule that. So we'll note and file the motion. There's actually just a motion. We'll do that. Next items, we're going to take items number 2 and 3 together. Can the clerk read those into the record, please?
Item number 2 is the City Controller reports relative to the audit of the city's home garage vehicles and departmental responses to the audit. And item number 3 is City Controller reports relative to the audit of the city passenger vehicles and fuel usage and departmental responses.
Great, thank you. Is the Controller's Office here to speak on these items? We actually heard these items shortly after the audits came out.
We gave a presentation probably a month or 2 ago.
Yes, but that was before the Department of General Services had a chance to respond. So if we'll probably just hear from the General GSD. How's that? Is that okay with you? Okay, so let's ask GSD if. Welcome. Your general response to the findings of the Controller's report, if you could just go over those quickly.
Leonard Walker with the Department of General Services, Director of Fleet Services. We had an opportunity to take a look at all the recommendations from the audit. There were, the scope of the audit included comprehensive evaluation of motor pool vehicles as well as passenger vehicles, which included sedans and light trucks, less than 10,000 gross weight, vehicle weight. Excluded DOT vehicles for parking enforcement as well as GSD operations of public and safety vehicles. The scope of the vehicles under the audit was approximately 2,500 vehicles. There were some key recommendations in the fleet and fuel audit. One was to evaluate the appropriate number of vehicles in the executive fleet reserve pool. 2 was to establish appropriate criteria to measure utilization and efficiency of motor pool vehicles. 3 was to evaluate reducing the number of vehicles in the regular motor pool. And 4 was to provide periodic usage information to departments to determine the necessity of trips out of the motor pool. Mm-hmm. Out of those recommendations, we've been aggressively moving forward with the recommendations regarding the size of the motor pool for the executive reserve motor pool. We have reduced the vehicles there by approximately 33%. Originally, there were 48 vehicles. In that reserve now, today we're at 32 vehicles. Likewise, for our regular motor pool, we've reduced the number of vehicles there by 10%. As far as utilization information to determine the motor pool efficiency, we've developed a matrix that evaluates the usage of the pool vehicles on a weekly basis. We can determine by location as well as which customers are utilizing the vehicles there. So we'll be reporting to departments on their usage to further make reductions as necessary. I would also like to thank the Controller's Office as well as given us an opportunity to revisit some of our policies and procedures as it relates to the motor pool and department assigned vehicles. And that concludes an overview of the audit.
Great, thank you. And so you do have a system or process in place now that will track usage of city vehicles, is that correct? Or you are implementing that?
We're implementing it now.
Implementing it. So a year from now, we will have better tracking of the usage of vehicles and know how.
Yes.
Okay. And when will you finish the implementation?
We'll finish, as far as the motor pool operation, providing reports to departments. We'll have, first quarter of next year, we'll have reports to them, as well as during the budget process, as far as the needs assessment of vehicles, department-assigned vehicles, we will be providing utilization information to departments so that they can evaluate their equipment.
Okay. Thank you. And the mayor's directive of January 22nd, 2009, terminated the usage of all Voyager credit cards for purchasing fuel at non-city facilities. Are there any outstanding Voyager cards? Are we still using those, or all of them are?
Yes, Renee V. Augustine with General Services. I'll be talking on behalf of General Services on the salient points of the fuel usage portion of that audit.
Yeah.
As for the Voyager cards, there are 148 cards issued to date. There have been 101 cards canceled since the audit.
And who still has the remaining cards?
We could provide that list to the committee if it chooses. We have that list for you. If we can,
Okay.
we can forward that to you.
Can you please provide that to the committee?
Sure.
And how much do these Voyager cards cost us, the remaining ones? Have we had a monthly account of how much they're costing the city?
We could include that information also as well.
Please do. Thank you. Okay, and there's a $2.1 million owed to the city from Nationwide Auction Systems. Are we collecting those, or what's the status of that collection?
Good afternoon, John Trevgoda with the Department of General Services. The matter's been turned over to the city attorney's office, so I'm not sure what I'm at privy to say and not to say. They're in the middle of looking at their litigation options, but they are actively pursuing it.
So actively pursuing that. Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you very much. And as you know, these reports came out at a time, and the controller was pretty disturbed about the amount of growth of vehicles that were being used by the city, when in fact the personnel growth wasn't as high as the growth in usage of vehicles, and that was one issue that was of concern. It seems like we are reducing the number of vehicles that are out there, but it certainly is something we need to continue to improve and better track, and it sounds like we are doing that. So, any questions, Mr. Zine?
Does that include motorcycles on this audit?
No.
It does not.
You included LAPD vehicles.
You might want to come up here and sit down.
And fire department vehicles, and LAPD has vehicles and motorcycles. So when it says LAPD vehicles, I would assume it would include motorcycles.
Good afternoon, Larry Tagawa, LAPD. In terms of motorcycles, if you're referring to the fleet reduction, no, that hasn't impacted the number of motorcycles, although it has, we have reduced our fleet size approximately 5% or so in the last year.
The motorcycle fleet or the LAPD fleet?
Excluding the motorcycles, just the LAPD fleet.
It shows,
The audit itself, sir, did not include motorcycles.
oh, didn't include.
And I'm Captain Carol Aborn from LAPD also.
What do you assign now?
We're Planning and Research Division. We oversee home garaging.
Okay. It shows a 40% increase in home garaging from '03 to '08. But the department says it grew by 10%. So is the home garaging up or down?
Home garaging, I don't have the 2003 numbers in front of me, but home garaging is up over 2003. A lot of that is expansion of surveillance details. It also, what happened when Chief Bratton came in, the department was using temporary home garaging pretty consistently for homicide call-outs, or standby status and those types of things, and those were converted from using temporary home garaging to home garaging authorities. We increased the number of vehicles. City Council approved additional vehicles for SWAT and other metro entities, expanded their home garaging. We've also expanded our K9 and bomb squad after 9/11. And those are some of the ones that I can recall. I can have a full accounting if you're interested.
No, so there has increased just because of the different changes in the department's
That's correct,
needs
sir.
and demands. Okay.
Yes, but we have reduced over the last year. There were a couple sets of reductions. The mayor's reduction we did in 2007, 2008. We reduced in over 60, but we also added the SWAT ones, which the City Council approved. And then last December, we went through again after both with the economic times and going through the controller's audit, we reduced 112 authorities.
Another question I have regarding the detective unit cars. A lot of them are Crown Vics. Why can't we use the compacts as we use with other departments? Whether it be the Honda or the Prius or something to that effect.
Sir, I do know that that was discussed at a chief's meeting, I believe. However, I don't know the outcome of that personally.
So if that could be explored, because detective cars that don't have the emergency equipment that are used for a variety of...
In general terms, one of the things that we've done in fleet about maybe a year and a half ago, for the non-emergency response cars, we are looking to replace them with fuel-efficient vehicles. And so we are looking at that. However, because of the budget situation, everything's been postponed as far as replacement vehicles. However, when it's practical and allowable, we are looking at more fuel-efficient cars in that area.
The mayor pulled his fleet of cars. That fleet's been pulled. And there's a number of cars, Hondas and Prius, sitting down in City Hall garage. Has there been any request to reallocate those to some of the salvage cars that could be salvaged? Because those cars aren't being used. He called them all back. I don't know how many he had in his fleet, but the mayor's fleet was called back.
Not that I'm aware of.
Somebody may look into that. Because as I leave the garage every day, there's a number of Hondas, Prius that are sitting there. And why couldn't they be reassigned to someone else?
The vehicles currently in the reserve fleet, probably many of the ones you're looking at. As I recall, the mayor's office turned in approximately 13 vehicles.
What happened to those?
Those vehicles, as I mentioned earlier, some of those vehicles have been reduced in the general motor pool. We have actually auctioned them off under the mayor's fleet reduction program. So we're down to 30, and before there was 48 in it, as I mentioned earlier.
40, okay.
48 reserve vehicles. And some of those, part of that growth was from the turn-ins. We had turn-ins not only from the mayor's office, we had a couple of cars from the controller's office and a couple of council districts as well.
Okay, because it just seems that we have a lot of cars sitting around down in the garage. on the level where we park. They could probably be used by the department that needs cars, or they could salvage some of those high mileage cars or cars that take a lot more gas. Not for police response, but for regular police or fire department operations. I saw a fire person today in a fire car on a Prius, which was rather unusual.
We have for hybrids, particularly with those are purchased with MECLA funding, and we do keep them a minimum. We have to keep them a minimum of 6 years. So there are. We haven't actually retired any hybrids yet because the newest one is the 2002 model year.
Right.
So some of those will be coming up soon for salvage. So there will be opportunities probably to redeploy if other departments need them.
Okay. Thank you.
And also with our early retirement package, it doesn't affect
It might be.
safety, public safety, but do we have plans on how we're going to deal with the potential 2,400 people that may retire? And these may be senior people. I mean, they're retirement people. Have we planned for that?
It's just the
Currently within GSD Fleet Services, employees eligible to retire, it's a cap so far, my understanding, of 87 mechanics, and I believe that's fleet-wide, and only 17 of those will be eligible for the package.
Okay.
So we don't see we do see an impact coming, but it shouldn't be that significant for equipment mechanics. I don't know about the other departments for GSD. There will be a change.
These are for people who have cars assigned to them for home garage cars?
We're not sure because the operating departments would have
hard
an
to
answer to that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with the concurrence of Mr. Zhang, we'll note and file items 2 and 3. Our last item, City Clerk.
Item number 4 is
Thank you.
Department of Water
Thank
and
you to
Power.
everyone who came today on this item.
Item number 4, Department of Water and Power Communications relative to the low-income discount program in response to motion.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, we didn't keep you here that long.
I'm waiting for a colleague.
Okay. So this is an update on the low-income discount program and our efforts to increase the number of participants and to improve our outreach efforts. Do you have a progress report on this?
Yes, I do. Mickey Yonamine, LADWP. And right now we are about 228,309 participants in our low-income program, Lifeline program, as of July 14. That results in about 55,000 participants that we've added since January of last year.
How many? I'm sorry, that was
5,000 that we've added.
Oh, good.
And towards the end of this year, we're anticipating adding an additional 25,000 or so, because our goal for the milestone for this end of the year is 250,000 participants. And then at fiscal year end, we're looking at 275,000.
Okay. And why do we have that increase? Is it our outreach efforts, or what's that due to?
And some of the outreach efforts that we've been engaging in, of course, are the events around the city. We have people that staff them and encourage people to sign up for the program. We've had a number of brochures and other things going out to, and applications going out to customers. But also we're partnering with other city departments such as Rec and Parks. We're trying to get the information out at the different locations that they have. For instance, they have daycare centers and things of that nature. So we're working with individuals with the Rec and Parks. Also, there are other agencies like Para los Niños that we've been working with to give information out to them. We've also worked with the employment development offices to ensure that potentially employees or people that are in situations where now they're falling into the situation where they may need fall into the low-income category, they'll have access to the program. We've also worked with the Social Security Administration where we've briefed their staff so they're aware of the program so they're able to help their customers when they come in. We've also had some advertising through the buses within the city of LA. And this last wave, we had advertising on the back of buses, and that just ended in March. We've also had articles going out with our Connections newsletter that go out with the bills for our customers. And and also in the future, we do have the opportunity to do outbound calling so that we can call various areas of the city and encourage people and let them know about the program, encourage them to sign up if they think they qualify.
Oh, good. Now, what's the status of the agreement with the Southern California Gas Company to access its database?
Yeah, the agreement is in place. What we're doing right now is working through the technical issues. Their database is not necessarily the same as ours in terms of the fields are not necessarily one-for-one compatible. So our IT folks are working through that to ensure that that interface is fairly seamless. But we are moving towards getting their entire database so that we can look at. The goal there is to ensure that all the low-income and lifeline customers that we have, they're aware of to a certain point so that they could get those people on care.
Yeah.
And then that the individuals that are on care on their program, we have access to them and ensure that they get onto our programs if they qualify.
Good. Now, I received a letter in the mail last week from the gas company, and it was very simple, plain, easy-to-read letter asking me several questions and then saying, if you said yes, you qualify, and please sign up. Do we do that for DWP? And how come if we do, how come I haven't received my letter?
Okay, there's a difference in terms of how we certify customers. We certify customers that they're low income upfront. The gas company does not do that. They actually take proxies as, for instance, if the customer already participates in some other program that would constitute low income, they will go ahead and take that. As long as the customer self-identifies that they are part of that program, they'll just go ahead and sign them up. And then they go in and certify only a certain percentage of them later on.
Okay,
So they're self-certified. We are not.
We are not. So when I moved into my home, I signed up for water and power, and I never got wind that I may be qualified for these programs. Isn't it easier the way the gas company does it to get more people enrolled? Seems like they're more proactive. I mean, so they self-certify, but to get this notice in the mail to say you may qualify, isn't that an additional step we can be taking, even if we enlist them up front? No.
We have the opportunity to do that. One of the things we have to be careful of is because we have gotten some feedback where some customers don't necessarily. We'd have to make sure that it's all our programs, because if we just target them with low income information, some people are very sensitive about that. They give us pushback and they don't like being singled out as potentially being qualified for low income. So we have to be very careful how we do that.
I wasn't offended.
But we have had that.
I didn't qualify. I was more offended because I didn't qualify. I would want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so we are very mindful that we have had that situation that it does occur.
But I think that's a minor point compared to the benefits we could realize by sending out a letter like this. We may offend some people, but we may enlist 5,000 more people. So
right at the moment, we are enlisting about 4,000, 5,000 people a month on that, and that's a pretty good pace for us. So it's not that. We're trying to reach our goals here, and I know that you want us to get to very, very high levels, but with our resources that we have and signing them up the way we do sign up, because we have to certify up front, 4,000 or 5,000 a month is a pretty good pace for us. Okay.
Well, you're doing something right because you are increasing your numbers compared to how we were before. So I won't pretend I know what's the best way to sign people up.
But I agree. Yes, more outreach is always. Those are things that we are planning on doing in the future as well. We're not going to stop outreaching to our customers.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we will, again, continue this for 90 days. I think in 90 days we will probably have some good data for the first 3 quarters of 2009, if you could present those to the committee and where we are in terms of the first 3 quarters for 2009. Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Zine, a motion to adjourn is in order. So ordered. Thank you. Oh, if you wanna. Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have to, but I will.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I thought the reason I was here, you wanted an update on the increase in the low-income subsidy for the water shortage year rates.
Okay.
And what the department has proposed is back in April when we went to council to seek approval for the water shortage rates, we were asked to come back with a hardship exemption for the water shortage rates. As part of the response to that request, we've added an increase to the low-income subsidy adjustment for our water system, for our water customers, whereby they will get a increase in their discount commensurate with the shortage year discount. So in this particular case, we would be increasing the water discounts, the water customer discounts by 15%. So for Lifeline customers, they normally get a discount of around $20 bi-monthly or $10 per month, which would be about a $3 increase bi-monthly for our Lifeline customers. And our low-income customers get about a $10 discount bi-monthly, which is about $1.50 increase that they'll see in their discount for the water shortage.
But I was told
Thank you.
that if you stay within a certain tier, your rates aren't changing. Only if you use more water, your rates change.
That's correct.
So if we want them to conserve, why would we give them a rate break?
Well, about 90% of our low-income customers are within the first tier, and will probably not see an increase in their rates at all. But in an effort to counteract some of the impacts that some of our low-income customers may see, we thought it would just be prudent to add an additional discount to help to support our low-income customers.
So I have a concern if we're talking about conservation, why would they go over the tier if they're low income?
If they go over the tier, they will still be paying the second tier rate.
But they would be paying as much as the person that doesn't have that discount. In other words, you're telling everyone to slow down with the water.
Correct.
Stay within your tier, and there's no change in the rate. You go over your tier, there's going to be a change. Now
Correct.
We're saying if you're low income, you go over your tier, we're going to give you a reduced
No,
rate.
that's not what we're saying.
What are you saying?
What we're saying is that we're increasing the low-income discount. We haven't changed the allocation method. So if you're a low-income customer and your baseline allocation is 10 HCF, say 10 HCF per month,
Okay.
we'll reduce that allocation by 15% to 8.5 HCF billing units per month. So they still get that same reduction. The only thing that we're doing is we're increasing the amount of subsidy that they receive on a monthly basis.
Okay. So they're not going to be able to use more water at a lower rate.
Yeah, at a little bit lower rate. Yes.
Okay. That's fine.
Good. Thank you very much. And you're right, we did ask for that information. We just saw Mr. Zhang getting up, so I figured the meeting was over.
I thought it was. I got a meeting at 4.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.